Hello and welcome to another Improve Your Chess video. And this is part 2 of Chess Strategy for Beginners, which was most requested in a survey I put out there. A lot of viewers wanted to see chess strategy. I'm doing this series where I play against a good friend of mine, John, and instead of discussing strategy in chess master games, which can be confusing, especially for beginners, even good chess players sometimes have trouble thinking or figuring out what some of the top players in the world are doing. Let's take a look at this game. It was 55.2% accuracy by my friend John, so he had some difficulties in this game, and we'll see why. And I played at 74.7, so I did have one mistake here where we saw the game jumped in his favor. So a strategy to always keep in mind is, after a move is made by your opponent, ask yourself what changed in the position. And before you make a move, say, well, once I move this piece, what will change? What will my opponent do in response? And that can help you avoid moves like this, which we'll see. All right, so inaccuracies. John had 3, I had 1. He had 4 mistakes. I had 0. Which I don't know. I would say this was a mistake. He had 1 miss. I had 2 missed opportunities, and he had 1 blunder. So let's look at the computer analysis while we're going over this. I had the black pieces, and my opponent begins with e4. Now, as far as strategy, the difference, well, first of all, when you start, it's always, almost always a good idea to take control of the center by putting 1 or 2 pawns in the center. The E and D pawn, if your opponent lets you, or the D and C pawn. And what's the difference between moving them 1 square or 2? Well, 2 squares forward helps unblock your bishops. If this pawn moved to E3, well, then the dark squared bishop could be blocked in by a pawn there. And the same with d3. It would block your bishops. So this is a good move. The difference between e4 and d4 as far as strategy, e4 usually opens the game up a little bit more, and d4 tends to lead to some more closed games where you have to maneuver around the center. So I respond with c5. This is the Sicilian defense. And this is a good counter-attacking move, and it also prevents my opponent from playing d4 and grabbing the center with both pawns, because then I can just knock that pawn out. So since he can't play d4, he puts the f4 pawn in the center. And this is the Sicilian defense. It looks like McDonald attack. But this could potentially leave some weaknesses around the king. So usually it's a good idea to jump this knight in here. That way the queen can't come in here at a future point and attack your king. But anyway, moving on. I do likewise. I place 2 pawns in the center, and now these are connected, attacking one another. What should be played here? Well, my opponent, he plays an inaccuracy. Now, why is this an inaccuracy? It looks like d3 might have been better, just developing another pawn and fortifying the e4 pawn. This does gain space, but you move a pawn again in the center. Instead of developing another piece, which is usually a good strategy, or a pawn, here you would probably want to develop that d3 pawn to fortify. Now this gives me time to develop something else. This is a good move, but it looks like it might have been better to develop a knight instead. All right, so the best move is played, d4, and it looks like I should immediately capture, which I do. So I don't want my opponent having all these pawns in the center. So I knock this one out. The queen captures. Now it looks like knight to d2 would have been better because instead of attacking and capturing with the queen, the knight could have tried to capture. And now because this queen is in the center, I'm able to develop a knight. The best move here. Why is this best? Well, for you beginners out there, you don't want to capture with your queen where it can be attacked. Now, John will have to waste time retreating, or moving here to the side. And inaccuracy, it looks like queen to f2 would have been better, helping to guard the king. But, he tries to attack, pinning my knight. And now this gives me time to develop something else. So I push forward here. It looks like it would have been better to get this bishop outside of the pawn chain. Another piece of strategy that I talked about before. But I kind of wanted to be able to bring my bishop here and attack his queen. So, maybe not quite the best plan, but at least it was a plan. And if you have a plan, you want to try and follow through with your plans. That way you're not aimlessly just moving pieces all over the place. So c3 here. Why is this played? Well, probably to restrain my knight. Once this bishop goes here to block the pin or break the pin, the knight could have jumped forward in the future, maybe to here. So this keeps my knight out, but this is a mistake. It would have been better to start developing pieces here. So I line up on the queen, but the computer actually likes f6, targeting the pawn. Now, when it comes to pawn chains, we see this little pawn chain of f4 and e5 here. Usually it's a good idea to attack the base of the pawn chain. But if I do that, he could just push here and then the base is all the way down here. The second way to attack a pawn chain is to attack the head of the chain. So if I move this pawn up here and he captures, I could recapture with a knight, or maybe the queen or whatever. I could recapture. So the queen, possibly under attack by that bishop, and we have a retreat back to c2. And apparently it would be better to go all the way back to d1 because now I can line my rook up on the queen, even though there's a pawn in the way here. That could be some potential danger. So another strategy is to line your rooks up on more valuable pieces or unprotected pieces, but especially the queen or the king here. All right. So now, once again, the computer wanted that f6 move. So knight develops. This is a mistake. It's usually better to develop forward to f3 or c3 with your knights. And also now this bishop is just blocked. So that's not so good. But, it looks like this knight wants to jump up here and attack my knight. So I develop another piece. The knight moves forward. This is a mistake. Why is this a mistake? Well, we have two attackers of the knight and only one defender. So I capture, recapture, and we grab the pawn and we go ahead in material there, grabbing that pawn. And the queen is under attack here. So if we go back and look at that, instead of capturing with the knight, it actually prefers that I capture with the bishop and then recapture with the knight. So bishop takes, pawn takes, then knight would take, harassing the queen. So the queen would have to retreat, and then, what do I do then? We could look at that. It says, knight to c2. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is definitely worth checking out. So they recommend that. And they don't even think that I should capture here because if capture, then knight captures attacking the queen, and once the queen moves, well, now I can just jump here to c2 and fork the king and the rook, and I'll be protected by this. So that would have been even better. So I overlooked those tactics. So, no matter how good your strategy is, tactics are even more important most of the time, because you can have the best strategy and then you messed up because you overlooked a fork or a pin or some easy tactic. All right, back to the game. We start trading off material here. The queen is under attack. Queen moves, and now it looks like f6 once again. They want me to just capture here, or sorry, attack the central pawn, leave this under attack, because if the queen captures me, I can just go ahead and pick this bishop off, which is protected by the queen, and it would be with a check, stranding the king in the center of an open board here. All right, so the queen moves up to protect, and now bishop to e2 is an inaccuracy. My opponent, maybe thinking he could castle, but that's not possible because of this battery attacking the castling square. All right, so here, once again, rook to c1, but this time the queen would be able to capture, and then it looks like I could capture this pawn, forking the queen and the rook. So I overlook these tactics, and I make this should have been a blunder, but it just says it's a miss. So what should have happened here is that, I guess at this point, John was panicking because I have this attack around his king stuck in the center. And so, what does he do? He overlooks the opportunity to go ahead here. So he could have captured. And then what should I do? Well, now I would be behind in material, and it looks like the best thing is to push this pawn attacking the queen, and then the queen could just retreat back. And now bishop to c6. But anyway, my opponent would have gone ahead. So if we go back, I make this move. My opponent, I think, got scared under the attacking pressure, I guess, and he makes a blunder here. So this is a game-losing blunder when instead he could have captured this bishop and gone ahead. So now I find the best move, capturing the bishop here, attacking the king. The king cannot even move because of the bishop. So there's a block here, blocking the check. And now we check again. And so the king moves forward. Now what would have been best there is that, should I check? Another strategy, if you see a check, you don't always want to immediately check. Beginners, they see a check, they want to pounce on the king with a check immediately. But sometimes it's better to bring other pieces into the game. So here, it looks like it would have been better to attack the queen instead with bishop to b5. Then it would really be looking bad. What then? So bishop to b5. So a good strategy is to hold off on checks and try to just activate your pieces. Get them where they can attack. If you have an attack against your opponent's king, a lot of times it'll take 3 pieces or more for that attack to be successful. So we already have 3, and it might not be quite enough. So if we brought the bishop in and have a 4th piece attacking, it looks like the best move here is queen to e2, but then we would just capture the queen. Where else can this queen go? Man, it is not looking good. Let's say the queen moves off to the side. with, or, well, I guess the only option is maybe something like this, lining up on our queen. But then we have what? Queen to d4, centralizing our queen, mate in 10. Anyway, let me get back to the game and see what actually happened. We attack. The bishop blocks. We check the king. The king has to, doesn't have to, but the king does move forward, and already we can attack the queen here, and we do. That's the best move. So, the strategy of bringing more pieces in to help with the attack definitely helps here. And now a mistake, leading to a mate in 1 here. So see if you can find out what the mate in 1 is. What should have been played here looks like king to f3 maybe is best. So that would just give up the queen. So we would just be, grabbing the queen. Now it's saying what, king to d2, to at least recapture the bishop once the queen falls. But either way, it's bad for white. So, maybe he's thinking, oh, now the queen can't be captured because the bishop is pinning. We could just capture the bishop, but then the queen would be safe. But there's a mate in 1 with this move. Now, how is this possible? Well, the queen is pinned by this bishop. This bishop, even though it's pinned to our king, it's still preventing the queen from moving because you can't move a piece and expose your king to check. That would be illegal. So here we have it, a checkmate with bishops, queen, and rook all helping here. All right, well, that had a little more tactics than strategy, but something that you can learn from all these tactics strategically, I guess, is to really ask yourself, all right, before I make a move, what will change in the position once I make that move, and what will my opponent do to counter it? And also, my opponent, John, could have gone ahead here after I make this mistake of bishop to e3, but he didn't ask himself, well, what changed in this position? And he might have seen that he has a bishop and a queen attacking and only one defender, and he could have snatched this bishop up and gone ahead in material, and then I could have been in trouble there. So a good lesson learned. Ask yourself what changed in the position after each move is made, and that can help prevent blunders and also help you win more games. All right, well, I'll do another one, a part 3 in this series of chess strategy for beginners. I know this was a shorter game and it had more tactics, but hopefully we'll have some longer games and more strategy to discuss. So feel free to leave any comments. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching and have a super chess day.